Well, it's great to be able to speak to you again today. It's been a while since I've uploaded anything to YouTube, and that's been a product of the time of the year. As many of you may know, in South Africa, our academic year runs from January to December, a little bit like the calendar year, and it's now a few days before Christmas. Today is actually the 21st of December, 2021. And so we're on our summer holidays. We normally start summer holidays at the university on the 16th of December, and we'll run through to early January. And of course, you can imagine at the end of the year, things always get incredibly busy. I said that I'd do this short little update video just to give you an idea of what's been going on, but also just to share some greetings at the end of the year. Oh my goodness, 2021 has been an incredible year with many ups and many downs. And so just to be able to end the year off with you, and to thank you for engaging throughout the year, for watching the videos, for leaving comments, for contacting me via social media. It's been a great joy to do so. And we've seen tremendous growth. It's certainly by the standards of my channel throughout the year. I think we're sitting on about just over 1,300 subscribers. Now, compared to some of those real big YouTubers, what is 1,300? But for a theology professor in South Africa, that's not a bad number to have. And it's made a couple of things possible. The one, of course, is that it's unlocked the community feature, and I've been posting one or two little things in the community feature on YouTube. But it also makes it possible for me to do some live streams, which I haven't done yet. But when you have over 1,000 subscribers, then it allows one to at least do that. So it's a wonderful joy to be able to share these greetings with you at the end of the year. And as I say, the last series of videos that I posted were from the Dirkie Smit retirement colloquium that we held, which was just an absolutely wonderful event. And after that was in early October, if I remember, or perhaps mid-October. After that, things got incredibly busy. And part of the reason for that is that our master's and PhD students have a submission deadline for the 30th of November. And I had two PhD students submitting their doctoral research by the 30th of November, and 4 master's students during that period. Now, you can imagine for every master's student, they're writing about 150 to 200 pages. And for every PhD student, it's between 200 and 300 pages. And of course, each of them has their timelines, and they have their language editors, and I'm getting pieces of their research. Some of them were better than others at sticking to their timelines. So I often found myself just spending hours and hours between the regular work, commenting, asking questions, finding small little things that I wanted them to attend to and correct, and then getting that work back, checking that the corrections were made, and getting them ready for submission. It's quite a huge thing for a student to be able to submit. And in terms of the little series that I made on doctoral research and doctoral work, I often encourage my students to remember the audience that they're writing for. Now, when I did my PhD in the Netherlands, I was encouraged to think about the fact that I was writing a book. But in many other countries, South Africa included around the world, the audience that you have to keep in mind is not some nebulous group of readers who may pick up your book or find it interesting and read it. But in actual fact, the only persons that you're writing for, your primary audience in your doctoral work, is your examiners. If you keep them in mind and you think, okay, 3 subject matter experts, 2 international and 1 national, are going to be reading this, and they're going to be examining it as a piece of academic research, then you tend to work in certain ways. You tend to work quite carefully and, follow technical guidelines and make sure that every T is crossed and I is dotted, and that every claim that you make is verifiable, defensible, has been substantiated in research, and that your findings are clear and consistent with the work that you've done. And that, of course, is the work of the supervisor. And I can tell you that very often my students, towards the end of their doctoral research, they're not that fond of me, or their master's research. And I warn them about that at the beginning. But the one thing that they can be certain of is that every time that I send it back to them and say, this needs a little more work, it needs to be tightened up, your argument has some jumps in logic, you need to attend to a few more things, there's some sources that are missing or haven't been read carefully enough or are not carefully enough represented within the broader field of scholarship. Every time they get that, I know it's frustrating for them, particularly those who've been working for 3 or 4 years on a PhD. But what my students do know, at least, is that when I allow them to submit, I'm fairly certain that the examiners are going to give their work a positive reading, that they're going to pass their PhD. And of course, that matters a great deal for people to be able to finish that degree. After that, then I often work with my students, and most of my PhD students have gone on to publish their PhD, rework it and publish it as a book, or at least get some academic articles out of it. So I help them to do that. But the submission is important. So that's been very, very busy. And then, of course, they're just the regular tasks that have kept me busy. Teaching my undergraduate courses, making sure that all of my students were ready for the undergraduate exams, that everything was marked, serving as head of our department, as the chair of systematic theology and ecclesiology. Of course, that's an administrative task. So making sure that all of the staff are okay and happy. And I can tell you that hasn't been easy during COVID times. We've had to work really hard to make sure that the quality of the work that we deliver and the ways in which we deliver our work is consistent, that it meets the needs of our students. And those are my dogs barking, by the way. So if you can hear them in the background, it's my pugs, Chewy and Rebel, making their way around here. But yeah, making sure that administratively and in terms of quality assurance, every requirement was met, and taking care of staff and students for the end of the year. We, as you may remember, employed 2 new staff members, so making sure that they were onboarded well and made to really find their work to be a joy and to make their own contributions within the field. And then, of course, I direct the Bayes Nadia Center for Public Theology, and the end of the year is one of our big board meetings. So reporting on the work that we've done, dealing with donors and funders, reports, making sure that our financial statements are closed for the year, that we report to our board on the work that we've done and the research that we've done. And then, of course, the regular things that continue, my involvement in the community, my involvement in my local congregation, Coronation Avenue Methodist Church. As I sit here, 21st of December today, I've been asked to preach at the Christmas services because our minister, one of my former students, the Reverend Ralph Afghan, has tested positive for COVID. So I often stand in, and I've been doing quite a bit of preaching over the last little while. I can also just mention that currently I'm also under isolation. My son fell ill a couple of days ago, and we're waiting for his COVID test results. So if that comes back positive, then of course I won't be preaching on Christmas Day either. So we have a plan C in place. I'm the plan B. And then just to share a little bit of news with you, some great news for the end of the year. I heard at our closing function at the end of the year from our dean that I'd been promoted to full professor. And I must say, I'm so incredibly grateful for this. Now, for family members and friends, when they heard the news that I'd been promoted to full professor, they asked the question, but haven't you been a professor for some years? And of course, that is the case. We tend to follow the European sort of ways in which academic promotions are made. So you start as a junior lecturer, and then when you get your PhD, you can be promoted to lecturer. When you supervised a number of students and produced some research in academic journals, you can be promoted to senior lecturer. Then when you become a sort of a subject matter expert, when your peers think that you have some expertise, normally a sort of national or regional expertise, you've written maybe 2 books, normally about 20 or so published articles. You've supervised 1 or 2 PhD students to completion, and maybe 8 or 10 master's students. These obviously are the criteria at our university. They differ from university to university. Then you can be promoted to associate professor. So that's the first sort of rank in the professorship. But then some years after that, you can be either nominated by your dean or by your colleagues to be a full professor. And normally that means that you've published at least 2 books. In my case, I've done a few more, that you've supervised a good cohort of students. I currently have, I think, 8 or so PhD students that I've completed, 3 postdocs that I've supervised, about 25 master's students, and that you've got a good publication record, and particularly a sort of international publication record, that your articles are published in international journals and your books are published by international publishers, and you're beginning to serve as the editor of international journals. I serve, for example, as an editor on the International Journal of Public Theology and Methodist Studies journals. So that sort of expertise begins to be recognized internationally. And then you get nominated, and your work gets evaluated by internal and external peers, people from elsewhere in your field. And if you are deemed to have met the criteria, you then become a full professor. Now, what does it change? It doesn't really change much. It is nice to have one's work recognized and appreciated, and for that I'm very, very grateful. Particularly, I think, because in my case I see my work as part of my vocation. I see myself as a theologian who is called to do this work in service of society and the church. So it really is a wonderful gift to have it recognized in that way. But some of the other changes are, of course, one would get some kind of a financial incentive from it, a salary increase, which is always very gratefully received, particularly because we are supporting a couple of people, some family members and some other persons financially. So that's always a gift to be able to be a little more generous with what we receive. But you also become a member of Senate, although I've been a member of Senate for some years as head of department, but you become a member of the Senate of the university, which is the sort of highest decision-making body, or council, I guess, is above that. And you retain your title. So that means that if you should retire from the university, you get to retain your title as professor. Now, what that really means, I don't think it means very, very much. I'm simply grateful to be able to do the work that I do. Yeah, and the other little bit of good news was that I received a Research Excellence Award for this year. In large measure, I must say that this was because of the work that I did on my last sabbatical. In 2018, I had a 6-month sabbatical, and during that period, I managed to produce quite a number of research outputs. There's actually a video that I did on that. I think it was something like 17 research units, which came out over a period of 2 years. And the normal expectation for a professor is about 3. So that level of productivity, I think, and really it is only because of the sabbatical. I had the time and the freedom to do that. So that was recognized, and for that I'm very, very grateful. What other news is there? My daughter, Courtney, she graduated with her degree. She got a BA in politics, philosophy, and economics. And I'm so pleased and proud of her. So she'll be going on to do honors next year in political science. She's specializing in international studies, and she has a particular interest in environmental policy and issues around ecological justice. So she'll be at the University of Stellenbosch. My wife, Megan's almost finished with her PhD. She's got another 2 chapters to do, and she's hoping by April next year to be able to hand in the first full draft of her PhD, which is in educational policy studies. She's been working on equity and justice, particularly for students in South Africa, in which maths and science education tends to be a real problem. It plays out along the regular lines of economic inequality in South Africa. If you are privileged and live in a privileged community with a good school, then you have access to science and maths and teachers who can teach science and maths. But for many persons who live in poorer communities, they don't even have science and maths teachers in their schools. And of course, that curtails the opportunities for people to study further at university to better their lives. So that's a little bit of an update on what we've been doing. So 2021 was a wonderful year. It was so wonderful to be able to work with colleagues at the University of Stellenbosch, to work with my students, the two who graduated with their doctorates at the beginning of this academic year. Martin Loubser was the one colleague who got his degree, and Kifas, by the way, and Martin are both teaching at universities. And then, of course, the two colleagues who received their degrees now in December. I think it was on the 13th or the 15th of December. I can't remember, 13th of December, Bishop Zachariah Manyok from South Sudan, who wrote a wonderful PhD on religious freedom and the central value system in South Sudan. And then my colleague Basilius Kasera from Namibia, who's teaching in Namibia. And he wrote a fantastic study on a contextual Namibian theology of justice, by critically engaging the work of Alan Busak, the Black African Reformed liberation theologian, who's very well known in our context. So congratulations to those two colleagues, and well done with their work. And then, as I mentioned, we have two colleagues who have submitted. Kijung Kim from South Korea, who worked on animal justice, an animal liberation theology, engaging the work of Andrew Lindsay and others in his work, and wanting to write a sort of contextual animal liberation theology for the Southeast Asian context. And then my other colleague, Steve Pearson, who wrote a really wonderful PhD on identity in relation to the modern market economy. It's a really excellent piece of work in which he engages traditional Trinitarian theologies and asks some questions around what it is that we conceive to be the identity of the human person in a westernized neoliberal modern economy. So a really great piece of work. So I'm hoping for good results for them. But also just to say to all of you, thanks for journeying with me throughout this year. Thanks for your patience with irregular uploads. I'm due for a sabbatical again next year, in the second half of the year. And if all things are equal, if we can travel again and do so safely, I'll hopefully be spending a bit of time back in Berlin again, at the Humboldt University in Berlin, sometime in Cambridge, possibly at Wesley House, where I'm a research fellow, and certainly some time in Brazil for the Global Network for Public Theology meetings, and possibly a little bit of time at my alma mater, Radboud University in Nijmegen, where they've invited me to teach. So I hope to be able to upload a few more regular videos for next year. But thanks once again for your support and your journey with me this year, for comments and engagements. And please let me know what you're up to. I'd love to know how you're doing and how things are going. And yeah, blessings for those who are Christian, who celebrate the high feast of Christmas. And to all of you, keep well, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, get vaccinated. Remember to maintain those disciplines, face masks, wash your hands, maintain social distance. These are just basic good values, morals to employ in a world where diseases spread so easily and people are vulnerable to suffering from it. So thanks for journeying with me this year, and I look forward to connecting with you again in the new year.